Welcome to Casual Politics, Ben Bradshaw. Thank you very much for accepting my request. I'm very grateful to you. First, please allow me to congratulate you for your re-election as Member of Parliament, and also for to put your name in the ballot to become Deputy Leader of your party. How disappointing was it for you to become to be re-elected as Member of Parliament and not see your party part of the government?
It was devastating. It was a very disappointing result, a catastrophic result for Labour. We went backwards in most of those seats in England and Wales where we needed to beat the Conservatives. Although, of course, I was delighted to buck the trend in my own constituency in Exeter, where I nearly trebled my majority. But we have a huge mountain to climb if we're to recover it in time to win the next election, and that's one of the reasons I decided to throw my hat in the ring to run as Deputy Leader, because I think with my experience and record of winning in a former safe Conservative seat in the South and turning it into a fairly safe Labour seat, that I've got something to offer my party that can help us win in those parts of the country where we need to broaden our appeal.
And in England they were saying that your party was too left-wing, and in Scotland they were saying that it was too right-wing, so which are you right?
Well, we face multiple challenges. I don't think it's about left and right or centre. It's about broadening our appeal across the piece. We have an SNP challenge in Scotland, we have a UKIP challenge in parts of the country, we also have a Green challenge in parts of the country, but actually 4 of the 5 voters that we need to win back in 2020 to win voted Conservative on May the 7th. So without winning those voters back, we can't hope to win, and that's where I think I have something to offer, because I've turned a former safe Conservative seat into a Labour one. I won people in my constituency who would consider themselves to be moderate Conservatives as well as Liberal Democrats and Greens, and it's that broad appeal, that big tent approach to politics that my party is going to have to replicate nationally if we're going to have any hope of winning the next election.
And to what extent do you think that new Labour years was damaging to your party's victory?
I don't think they were damaging at all. I mean, people forget that in 1997, 2001 and 2005 we had 3 historic record victories under Tony Blair, whatever you think of Tony Blair.
Well, with a decline majority unlike Thatcher years.
Well, with the huge majorities in 1997 and 2001, and with a smaller majority in 2005, but still a very healthy majority. I think most of my Labour colleagues would give their back teeth to have a Labour majority at all, let alone one of the size that we had in 2005. In 2005, don't forget, we won 42 seats in the 3 southern regions outside London. We now hold just 12 of those. We're going to have to win all of those seats back and more to have any hope of a majority at the next election. So people can poo-poo or be sniffy about the Blair record, but he won elections. He got a Labour government, and there's no point being in politics if you can't get into government and deliver for the people who desperately need a Labour government. And it's not about going back to the past, but it's about rediscovering the source of that broad coalition that we had in the late 90s and early noughties. We have to rebuild that to have any chance at all of delivering for the people who really need a Labour government.
And do you think that your party should move beyond dichotomies of Blair Brown years?
Well, we certainly do have to move beyond those. And 1997 is how many years ago? 18 years. By the time of the next election, it'll be closer to 25 years. So, of course, as John Prescott always used to say, we need to apply our traditional Labour values to the modern setting and to the reality of the modern world. But I think the lessons that we can learn from the past are that Labour wins when we combine our traditional commitment to social justice and equality with our support for aspiration and for ambition. And I think one of the problems that we had in the last 5 years is that we were very good at stressing our commitment to social justice and to equality, but we weren't so good at stressing our commitment and support for aspiration and ambition, and particularly the importance of business in contributing to the overall wealth of the country, without which we cannot have the redistributive policies, we cannot fund the good public services that people want. We forgot that, and we need to relearn that lesson.
And do you think that Ed Miliband was he wrong to resign as the leader of your party? Because as you may remember, in 1979, despite his defeat, James Callaghan still remained as the leader of your party to rebuild your party for another year or so.
I don't think it's a question of right or wrong. He made the decision. I actually think Ed had a very good short campaign. He grew in the campaign, and I had many constituents in my constituency tell me that they reassessed him in a positive way during the campaign. But I think after such a catastrophic defeat, he took responsibility for that, and I think that was an honourable thing to do. And I think it would have been very difficult for him to hang on, and I think there was an appetite in the party to get on and move on and go through a process of reflection, have an honest and open discussion about why we did so badly, why we lost, and take our time in electing a new leadership team. And we've got the time to do that now over the summer and have a proper debate, and hopefully elect a team who can take us forward to victory, but also learn the lessons of what we need to do to secure that victory.
Well, in what way the role of deputy leader is it important to rebuild your party?
Oh, the role of leader is hugely important.
Deputy leader.
Oh, deputy leader. Well, the role of the deputy leader is one that will be, in the end, set by the leader. I mean, the leader will decide what kind of deputy leader he or she wants and the role is. I think what's important is that you have a deputy leader who can be loyal to our leader. I've always been loyal to all Labour leaders, Tony, Gordon and Ed. I was prepared to go out and fight for them at their toughest moments, but also deliver hard truth to them when I thought they were justified if they were getting something wrong. Somebody who's trusted both in Parliament and in the media to be a communicator, a trusted ambassador to the rest of the party, but also beyond the party to those parts of civic society in our country that Labour hasn't been reaching and engaging with very, very well. And someone who has the breadth of experience and skills to do whatever the leader decides he or she wants the deputy leader to do. And also someone who doesn't want to be leader. I don't want to be leader. I've never wanted to be leader. I don't have my own agenda. I could work with any one of the leadership candidates, and I think I complement any one of them in useful ways. So that's why I'm going for the job, and that's why I hope the party members and others with a vote will support me.
And is it just a symbolic post then?
Well, it's an important post. You're deputy leader of the Labour Party. It's an elected post, so it has some power. But in the end, it has to be the leader who sets the overall strategy, working with the deputy and the rest of the party and the country, and who also decides what they want a deputy to do. I don't think the deputy leader should try to be the general secretary, for example, and try to take over the party organisation. We all have our own views as to how we can improve all sorts of things, but we need to listen to people, particularly those candidates who didn't win, and we need to have a proper process, I think, before we come to any firm conclusions about what the role should be or what the party needs to do. In the end, that'll be up to the leader to decide. And I will work very closely with whoever is our leader, if I'm elected, to ensure we take the right decisions to secure a Labour government in 5 years' time.
But your party still hasn't got a leader, and already some of your colleagues wrote a letter, including Margaret Hodge and Frank Field, to change and to urge for putting into place a mechanism to change the leader. Do you support that letter? Did you support it?
I wouldn't have a problem with putting myself forward for re-election in 2 or 3 years' time if I wasn't doing a good enough job. How realistic that is, I don't know, but I certainly think the Labour Party will be less sentimental about getting rid of a leader or a deputy leader if they don't think they're performing well enough. I think we've learned that lesson from our previous year's experience. So if the party or the NEC decides that's a mechanism they'd like to introduce, I wouldn't have a problem with it. In most walks of life, if chief executives are not performing or if they're failing, then they don't last very long. And I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be the same in a political party.
Because Conservatives, they've got a good reputation of changing their leaders, so why they're not Labour? Because Tony Blair, he was not toppled by the backbenchers, he was toppled by Brown, so it was a different story.
Well, Tony Blair wasn't toppled in the end by anybody. Tony Blair decided that after 10 years he'd had enough, and I have some sympathy with that. I mean, the Conservatives... Under some pressure, but it wasn't a pressure that he couldn't have resisted if he'd wanted to. After all, he just won a third thumping majority in 2005, so and he was still very popular in the country. I think if the Conservatives have no formal mechanism to get rid of leaders, they're just a bit more, or have traditionally been a bit more brutal about doing it. The Labour Party tends to be rather more respectful and kind to our leaders. We want to see them succeed and will them to succeed. But look, I'm confident that whoever out of the three leading contenders gets the leadership could do a perfectly good job. So I don't see this problem arising. I think they all have the ability and the skill to be excellent party leaders and very good Labour prime ministers. But in the event that they aren't or don't or fail, I'm sure the party will look very hard at that closer to the time and come to the right decision.
And how can your party win back votes lost to UKIP supporters in Labour's northern heartland?
Well, we don't do it by adopting UKIP's language about immigrants or about people on benefits. We do it by moving the debate onto Labour territory. Yes, we need to have credible policies on immigration and on welfare reform, but we need to talk about jobs, good jobs, skills, education and schools. You know, there's a very strong correlation between high levels of UKIP support and poor standards in schools, housing, public services. If we can boost the life prospects and the hopes of the sort of people who are attracted to UKIP, that's the way of dealing with UKIP, not by trying to out-UKIP on immigration and welfare rhetoric. That's not the Labour way, those aren't Labour values, and I'm confident that we can also, through good organisation, because it strikes me that in those areas where Labour is well organised, where Labour councillors and Labour MPs serve their communities well and are visible, it's more difficult for UKIP to get a foothold. In those parts of the country where perhaps our organisation and our brand is not as strong and doesn't have such a good reputation, UKIP can make advances. So it's a combination of policy and organisation.
But don't you think that before the election, it was because of that you adopted UKIP's rhetoric, for instance, on immigration, that you lost some of your core voters actually?
No, I don't. I think there's a very strong understanding across all walks of the public that there's an element of fairness to conditionality when it comes to welfare. That there should be a stronger contributory principle, for example. We're almost unique in the European Union in that not having a contributory principle when it comes to our welfare system. So the very sensible proposals put forward by Labour about there being a period of waiting before you could claim benefits, I think was perfectly reasonable. But at the same time, certainly I and my Labour colleagues have always been very clear that about the benefits that migration brings to the UK economy, both in terms of its overall impact on our economic growth and success, but also in terms of the contribution that migrants make across our public services, without whom they would be in serious trouble.
You talked about welfare. A few days ago there was a rally against austerity in London. Did you support that rally?
No, I don't think the way to defeat the government and win the next election after having just suffered a catastrophic defeat is to go on a demonstration. I think that's a counsel of despair.
So was Jeremy Corbyn wrong?
Well, that's his decision. I wouldn't have been at that rally. That's not the way to win the election, and that's not the way to actually deliver for the people who need a Labour government. The way to deliver for people who need a Labour government is to organise, develop the right strategy and make sure we can command a majority of the electorate at the next election. You don't do that by going on a demonstration.
So do you think that because two of most prominent Labour figures, including Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn, they were there as well, so you say that it's damaging to your party's image? So do you think that they should get some sort of expelled as Tony Benn was in 1983?
No, it's important. It's important we have a broad debate, but I don't share Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn's view or analysis of why we lost the election. Look, we didn't lose seats in Southampton and Plymouth to the Tories. We didn't hemorrhage votes to the Tories and to UKIP because we weren't left-wing enough. I mean, that's a ludicrous suggestion, if you don't mind me saying so. As I said to you earlier, 4 of the 5 voters we must win back to have any hope of a majority in 2010, 2020 voted Conservative. They didn't vote Green, they didn't vote SNP, they voted Conservative. Those are the people we have to win back if we're going to have any chance of winning the next election. We don't win those back by going on an anti-austerity march.
And after all, does deficit matter that much?
Of course the deficit matters, because how is it fair or just to future generations to be spending their money? Of course the deficit matters, but we also need to be clear that the deficit was not caused by the Labour government. The deficit was caused by the global financial crash, and we were very bad.
Overspending.
We were absolutely no. It wasn't that. It wasn't the result of overspending. We had the second lowest net debt of all the developed countries at the time of the global financial crash, the second lowest after Canada. The reason the deficit then rose was because we rescued the banks, we bailed out the banks, and we also had to keep our economy going to protect people. So we did a very poor job, I think, in the last Parliament at exploding, countering the lies of the Conservative Liberal Democrat government that the global financial crash was caused by Britain's Labour government. It patently wasn't. It was the global financial crash that caused the deficit, not the deficit that caused the global financial crash.
And do you think that your party has got enough responses to tackle the deficit?
Oh yes, I do. Yes, I do. I don't think we did the last election, but I think that's exactly what we need to develop. And that's why I think if we develop a credible economic policy and win back people's trust on the economy, and a credible industrial strategy, because I don't see any signs of that from the current government. All you get from the current government is a free market, laissez-faire, deregulation agenda. That's not a proper industrial strategy. The only way that we will pay down the deficit is by improving productivity. We are suffering from a productivity disaster at the moment. We had the biggest fall in productivity in the last 5 years of any major country, whereas under the Labour government, between 1997 and 2007, we had the fastest productivity growth of any country. We need to recreate that success. You can only do that with a proper industrial strategy which focuses on high wage, high growth jobs, not the kind of low wage, low growth jobs that we've seen under this government. And that's where I think Labour will win through. And
my last question, because I think that you're in a rush. What would be Ben Bradshaw's role to rebuild his party over the next 5 years?
To support our leader, to support the right strategy to win, and help us win back votes in the South, which is where we need to so badly to win the next election.
We shall wait and see. Thank
you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.